because Cole came in, was able to finish the game no problem. And, that was kind of what our biggest concern, one of our biggest concerns was coming into the season was, okay, how does this team react when Cole Anthony is off the floor? Who's that guy that's coming in at point guard? We always said, well, it's Leaky. Well, he wasn't available.
Yeah.
He was out the second half. So it was, now you put in KJ Smith, and I think people, when we saw him come into the game, I think everybody was like, oh, this is not good at all. But there's not a whole lot that you can say against KJ with what he did in the game against Oregon. And I mean, you can see now why he's on scholarship.
Yeah.
I mean, this kid works hard. And he was a big reason why Carolina was able to pull out this win. If he doesn't come in and play the way he did, if he comes in and turns the ball over a few more times or whatever, this is a different. There's a whole different conversation that we're having on this show. And Carolina likely has 2 losses instead of just 1.
The other thing I took away from this game was the awareness from Roy Williams and the coaching staff to slow the game down a little more than they would have liked to, because if they would have kept running, there was a possibility the game would have went south. And also, Cole Anthony made 2 really big plays in this game that cannot be understated. He had the block at the rim, which just shows that he's a complete basketball player.
Yeah, exactly. All around player. I think a lot of people want to focus on, the fact that he's not shooting all that efficiently, but I think that's just kind of what comes with this game. He's an ISO type. He's going to thrive in ISO situations when he gets to the NBA. But you're right. That hustle and the ability to get up that high.
And not foul.
Not foul. Block. I don't remember which player it was for them, but a guy that is much bigger than him, much bigger, probably much stronger than him, goes up, blocks the shot, no problem. So, yeah.
And then he got a bucket in the final minute where it was Roy Williams gave him the ball, they spread the floor, he got a screen from Garrison Brooks,
right,
and he was able to get to the rim. A simple play, but he was tough enough to make the play, get the lay-in, and preserve the win. And Carolina now can leave Battle for Atlantis going 2-1. So you feel like you accomplished something. And that's what you were wanting to do. And so now that we've looked at all 3 games, where do you stand with this Carolina basketball team now that we know a little bit more about them?
Well, I mean, I think what happened was pretty much what we all thought could happen. Third place finish was maybe where we saw this team. I know there were a lot of people that thought this team was going to be in the final of the tournament. Like you said, I think we all overestimated just how good Michigan actually was coming into that game. I think everybody thought that coming in, this was going to be just like last year's Michigan team where they were really good defensively, but they weren't going to be able to shoot the basketball well. That was not true. We found that out pretty quickly. But I think the final game against Oregon, and I mean, look, if you want to say that you don't think Oregon's all that great and that the Tar Heels just got lucky and found a way to win, well, you can die on that hill alone because there's not going to be many people on that hill. Yes, this team is still struggling to shoot the ball. I just said earlier in this podcast, this team frankly cannot shoot. They are going to have to win games offensively through their big men. That's the way that they're going to put up points and be able to keep up with teams. But at the same time, this team once again shows that they are as good of a defensive team as we've seen in the half court in a while for the Tar Heels. I mean, we talked about it coming into the year. If you're going to win games, you have to do it defensively. They've done it so far. The final game against Oregon, they held them to 36% from the field, a team that is usually pretty efficient from the field. So we're seeing the things that we need to see defensively, and I think that should have people feeling confident that this team is still going to be able to make noise in the ACC, is still going to win the bulk of the games that they should. But there is still a reason to be concerned about the fact that the transfers are struggling. The shooting really isn't there outside of maybe B-Rob. And, I think that, the fact that this team is still young, it should still be a little concerning to people, because when you get into ACC play against some of the more experienced teams, that could cause you some issues. But I think overall, this was a huge that final game for me is the one that I vote. That was a huge step in the right direction for this 2019-20 team.
I think what I took away from it is their best offense, is going inside, getting back to playing Carolina basketball, put the ball on the post, and let your two big guys do the majority of the work. I think this team's tough. And Carolina's often been labeled as a team that is soft. They're not going to compete at a high level in terms of their toughness. But I thought they were tough enough in the Michigan game to get back into the game after being down 24.
Right.
And then the Oregon game, which was their competitive fortitude was going to be tested, because you had to turn around the day after getting your butt kicked. You're on Thanksgiving holiday. You could have mentally checked out.
Oh, it would have been very easy.
And you had to play at 11:30 in the morning, and they showed up, and they punked a team that's going to probably win the Pac-12, be a top 3 seed in the NCAA tournament, and that's something that they can build off of. It's going to be it's going to be a bumpy road. We're going to go through some highs, and we're going to go through some lows. Mm-hmm. You did that in a span of 24 hours on Thanksgiving Day and on Black Friday.
Hey.
So that's just kind of foreshadowing what this season, what this upcoming week could be like for the program and this team as they venture into ACC play coming up at the turn of the calendar. So, but that was my thing. I think you saw enough to still be optimistic that this Carolina basketball team can compete in the ACC. And if you compete in the ACC, that means you're going to compete nationally. And that's what we wanted to know. We wanted to learn what this team has. And I think you learn that this team has what it takes to win big-time basketball games in the future. And so
I wanted to point out, you did put on Twitter that we were recording the Battle for Atlantis podcast, and you asked what stood out. There were a couple people that responded to us. So Jason Thomas, at Coach Thomas, 1123 responded and said, before the Oregon game, we needed more scoring. The grad transfers need to give more, which, we can both agree with that.
That's
very,
agreed.
very true. After the Oregon game, we looked a lot better. The grad transfers still need to give more on the offensive side. I feel better about the team. I feel like that's kind of where everybody is right now, feeling a little more confident after the win. And I agree. Yeah, the grad transfers on the offensive end, you brought up a good point when we were discussing this the other night. I think that these guys, both guys have had some moments defensively, and especially with Pierce, he does some of the other things that you really like, especially rebounds. But yeah, both of these guys really struggling on the offensive end. And the other thing was, we were really, really counting on this team on those two guys to help this team shoot the three better, because we lost our two best three-point shooters from a year ago in Kobe White and, of course, Cam Johnson. We just haven't seen that so far. They are not shooting well at all from deep. The better of the two is Justin Pierce, but it's not really by much. I think I did the stat the other day, 24.2% from three for the two combined. Not good. Not what you were hoping for. So I agree. I think, as the season, it's going to be interesting to see as the season goes along, because I think that the learning curve for these guys is bigger than maybe we originally expected. We thought they would come in, be able to adjust pretty quickly because they were dominant scorers in their mid-major conferences. I think it's taken a little bit longer, but as the season goes along, maybe that shifts. And then our good friend Megan Arrington, M. Arrington 12 on Twitter, says, need more out of Playtech, Pierce, and Keeling. I agree with Pierce and Keeling. Playtech, he had a terrible game against Oregon. That was his worst game of the season. Poor shot choices, just not efficient with the basketball. But that's really the first time all year where I've taken a lot of big issue with how he's played. I think, he's filled the role in about as well as he could. I think he just kind of is what he is.
Yeah, I mean...
he was the 3-star that came in because he could shoot, and he just really hasn't been able to find his stroke since getting the game.
I just feel like, he can't play 18 minutes and not score. That can't become a habit.
Right.
I think, what Megan is getting at, and me and her have had conversations, he's got to be able to hit a 1 or 2 threes a game. It just provides some perimeter scoring for Carolina.
Right.
Because he's going to take care of the ball. He's going to scrap and fight and claw and play pretty good defense for an undersized guard, which I like. But he's got to give you some points. He's got to give you a lift in that department on this year's team. Last year wouldn't have been a problem. When Joel Berry was here, it wouldn't have been a problem. This year, it's a problem if he plays significant minutes and doesn't score.
Well, she says something else that I think we both agree with, which I don't know how we haven't talked about this yet. Free throws won us the Oregon game and will continue to be a huge factor moving forward.
Yeah, This is a team that shot 50% against Michigan, turned around the next day and shot 95%. That's the highest turnaround in Carolina basketball history.
Yeah, that was night and day between those two games. It's very, very different.
I've spoke on this. And I guess we've been talking. I don't want to beat a dead horse. It's so important for this year's team because if you can steal points when that clock is stopped, it's going to help you get that 80-point threshold, which you feel like if you get to 80 points or higher, you feel comfortable winning.
Right.
And look at the Michigan game. What have I told you? 2 missed turnovers equal what? It's a silent turnover. And that's something.
2 missed free throws. You said 2 missed turnovers.
Whatever. You know what I'm getting at.
There you go.
It's way too early for all that. But
well, I mean, honestly, if you look at it, if Carolina makes,
if they make all the free throws, they beat Michigan.
Well, if they make, but I'm saying, okay, that's not. But how realistic actually is that they would make every free? But
they've been in the
mid-60s. They would have been in the game, and would have had a chance late.
They've been in the mid-60s as a team. They've got to get into the mid-70s.
I'm going to be honest with you. Mid-60s, that is god awful. That
reminds me of the free throw shooting on NCAA 10, where it was just it was hard.
You just had to guess.
Yeah. It's kind of what Carolina's at. Well, maybe we'll make them. The good news was when Oregon, they had to make 4 or 6 free throws in the final minute. Made them all. My issue in the Michigan game was, did it not seem like every time they went to the line, they would hit the first shot and miss this? They always had, nobody could knock down both shots. And that is just what killed them because, and especially with that second free throw when it would miss, guys weren't running back, and there were times it was just easy baskets for Michigan. And those are the most frustrating when you have a chance at the line to knock down a free throw, and they turn around, come down the other end. It's a three-point turnaround like that. That is what is most frustrating. They got it fixed against Oregon. That's the good thing. Hopefully they can keep it up as the season goes along because, like you said, you've seen the way these guys have shot it. It's not that they don't know how to shoot free throws. The stroke, all their strokes are fine. Nobody is awkward at the free throw line or is just, we don't have, Desmond Hubert. Right.
We knew he couldn't shoot free throws. That you just couldn't. These guys have the ability. They just have to knock them down. And then the last thing that she said, too many lazy passes and stupid turnovers. She says in both games, so I'm assuming Michigan and Oregon is what she's really focusing on. I don't know because, they played 3 games, so I don't know what she's referring to in both games. Michigan, I agree. Very, very sloppy at times. I thought against Oregon, for the most part, they took care of the basketball. The biggest concern for me is when it comes to turnovers, there are a lot of turnovers coming from the big guys, mainly Garrison Brooks, who's a veteran. That's one of those. If you're turning it over on entry passes and everything, that's fine. But when you have your big men turning the ball over repeatedly, that's the most concerning thing to me because your big men are supposed to be strong with the basketball, and these guys are getting ripped at the rim, and that's one of the biggest issues for me so far early in the season.
Yeah, great analysis from Megan. Megan, if you do listen to this podcast, come work for us. We've
said that multiple times.
We're trying to recruit you. We'll throw a Roy Williams, Mac Brown recruiting
pitch. We're lacking
the
3-point shooting that we need.
You're the missing piece to the Heel Tough blog becoming even more successful than we already have gotten to. All right, so with that, we're gonna shut this thing down. But before that,